All right, they call themselves 99ers. This is a group of people seeking unemployment benefits paid for by taxpayers beyond the already greatly extended 99-week duration. Today, they went to Wall Street to protest. Have we become a nation expecting endless entitlements paid for by others? That's the question. To our freedom fighters, Fox Business Network's stock editor and my good friend Elizabeth McDonald, known to the world as EMAC, chairman of the economics department at George Mason University, Don Boudreau, and nationally syndicated radio talk show host and Fox contributor Leslie Marshall. Leslie, to you first. Is there any end to the point at which the government will pay people not to work?
Well, I guess it depends how many people are in the House and the Senate that are Republicans, Judge. Basically because they're saying, hey, let them get a job. The problem is there aren't jobs to be had. And if we want what's best for the economy and best for the people, because it does take a village, that village being the United States of America,
right,
we need to provide a way for people to pay the bills, to keep their jobs. Otherwise, this is just an extremely negative domino effect, and we go back to where we were.
All right. Do you find any place in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to pay people not to work? I'm not talking about Trenton or Albany or Tallahassee. I'm talking about Washington.
Does the Constitution provide for unemployment benefits? No, I don't believe it addresses unemployment.
Answer no. All right, thank you. What are the long-term effects of unemployment benefits? You've studied this in your work at George Mason, Professor Boudreau. Is it an incentive to stay out of work, or is it an incentive to get a good job?
It's an incentive to stay out of work. If you pay people to be unemployed, you'll get more unemployment. It's the same way if you pay people for apples, you'll get more apples.
Does the federal government have any business doing this, EMAC? Does the federal government have any concept of the long-term effect of continuing to pay people not to work?
I'll tell you something. The Federal Reserve, to the professor's point, has already, some officials there have said, yes, it could add, we don't know how much of a percentage point to the unemployment rate. J.P. Morgan Chase has also had studies all along those lines. But your broader question is, are we becoming a soft bailout nation because of these policies? Look, 2/3 of the jobs drop in this country is due to lack of job creation. So companies are afraid of all the new rulemaking coming out of Washington.
Look, Leslie, I am an absolutist when it comes to the First Amendment. You could say anything you want on a street corner, especially if you're criticizing the government. So I don't criticize these folks that are in Wall Street saying they want money for their speech. I criticize them for the concept of entitlement. Is Wall Street or is the government obligated to pay them? I mean, at some point, the unemployment benefits must end.
Judge, how many of the American people, I'm one of them, with our tax dollars,
right,
are paying for Wall Street sins and bailed them out? These people are saying, look, our tax dollars are keeping you at work, create a job for me, or at least extend unemployment benefits so I can feed my kids, pay for my health care, and keep my house. These people are angry because they are the have-nots. They're looking to the haves to help them, and the haves are laughing on the backs of the have-nots.
EMAC, so this crowd is in Wall Street rather than D.C.
Right.
D.C. is where they give away the money. They're at Wall Street because they don't like the money that went to Wall Street, or they think Wall Street should pay them not to work. That's insane.
Yeah, I don't think there should be on Wall Street. They should be down on Capitol Hill protesting the policies that are coming out of Washington, and that what is really behind the lack of job creation in this country. What's
behind the lack of job creation in this country? Is the Federal Reserve devaluing cash, or having interest rates so low that people can borrow and spend recklessly?
And I think also what EMAC said just a moment ago, the uncertainty created by the frenetic fiddling we have now in the market. Investors are scared, and so they're staying away.
Yeah,
jobs aren't being created.
6,000 pages of new rules coming out for health reform and financial reform, written in pencil and not pen. Those rules have yet to be written. Of course, companies are going to keep $1.8 trillion parked in the balance sheet. Of course, companies are going to offshore their cash, as they have done more than $1 trillion at 4 tech companies alone.
Leslie, I don't think this is a Republican or a Democrat thing. I'm a libertarian. I think that there are big government people in both parties. Do you worry about how these bills are going to be paid back? I mean, if this money comes from the Fed adding zeros to a bank account of one of its depository banks, or if it comes from the government actually selling bonds to China and cash coming into the U.S., either way, the money has to be paid back. Are you concerned about who, when, and how it'll be paid back?
No. And the reason I'm not is because, where is our concern about paying China back? I mean, seriously, if we look at history, and I'm not an economics person, I'm a talk show host.
I know, but you have to be
okay?
concerned about the $14 trillion debt. You tell me you're not concerned about it.
I'm concerned about it.
Of course I'm concerned about the debt, but I also know my history. And whether it's the economy or social issues, there is a cyclical issue here, and you economy folks know this.
All right, the
we
history
go up, we
of
go
which
down, we go up, we go down. I watch the roller coaster ride.
Okay, all right, good. Professor Boudreau, the history of which she speaks is a history of the Federal Reserve printing money, devaluing cash, devaluing property in order to bail out the government.
Yep, exactly.
And why won't we learn the lessons of that history, that you can't solve a problem caused by too much borrowing and spending and printing cash with more borrowing, spending, and printing cash?
Because politicians don't want to learn that lesson.
Look, you can't force feed the economy with more money. What we need is more animal spirits, and the market's not happening.
Leslie, Emac, Don, hang around, please, during the break. We'll be right back with you. The recent The TARP bailout for the banks was rubber-stamped in a rush. Congress allocating hundreds of billions of dollars with very little vetting on where the money would really go. Now there's a report that a chunk of that money went to banks and companies and governments overseas. All right, domestic bailouts are bad enough, but is this the ultimate sign it's time to stop doling out the dollars? Back to our freedom fighters, McDonald, Boudreau, Marshall. You were scandalized by the AIG bailout.
It is the
Some of the AIG money went to Goldman Sachs. Some of the Goldman Sachs money went straight to Europe.
Yeah, that's right. $65 billion of taxpayer money went to bail out a lot of these trading partners, a lot of them foreign banks. This is the most corrupt bailout of all. And here's why. Because Tim Geithner basically rubber-stamped it and said they can get this money. He said we can't get these companies to knuckle under and make haircuts on their trades with AIG. We got to pay them 100 cents on the dollar. He said basically the U.S. was a creditor at that time. They didn't have standing. When at a time they were making up the rules as they go along, I'm not buying it.
Leslie, here's a softball to you. It was a Republican bailout. It was TARP. It was done by President George W. Bush. Now hit that ball out of the park. Shouldn't they have known where the money was going before they gave Hank Paulson and then Tim Geithner a blank check?
Oh, Judge, I could kiss you for your opening remark and lead into that one. I always say this was the former president's parting shot as he left the Oval Office to Americans. And you know what? The majority of Americans, if you remember, Judge, myself included,
right,
and I am a liberal Democrat, against this bailout. One of the reasons against it, because of this issue. It's who's minding the store, who is policing this. And by the way, I've got to blame my party, too, because, of course, Democrats didn't say, no, we don't want this. This was approved on a bipartisan level and signed by former President George W. Bush against the will of the American people.
I don't believe
and this is one of the reasons.
I don't believe what I'm hearing. It takes TARP under a Republican administration to bring this liberal Democrat into some sense of fiscal conservatism. God bless you. TARP was a disaster. The money was appropriated. It's still sitting in a bank, and the government is still appropriating money. What did they think they were going to do with that money?
Well, they said it was going to stimulate the economy, but obviously it was a slush fund to give away to buy political favors. I want to say a word about the money going to foreign corporations.
Please.
Right. I don't like my money being taken from me to go to any corporation that I don't support voluntarily. I don't care if the corporation's based in China or based in California.
Right.
What's wrong is the bailout, not the location of the companies.
What's wrong is that the federal government that the Congress gave a blank check to Paulson and Geithner, and they gave blank checks to AIG and Goldman.
Judge, look, we've had a number of banking crises in this country. Look at the S&L crisis. We had a Resolution Trust Corporation that basically took those assets, sold them off. They didn't set up a slush fund to float these bad banks on their bad assets, and that's what happened in this bailout. Taxpayers have a right to be outraged.
Marshall, I'm going to bring you back to your Democratic camp. The Democrats, mostly Democrats, I think a few Republicans voted for this, the $26 billion bailout of the states. A lot of it's going to teachers and cops. They claim it's coming from food stamps. Do you really think that I believe that the Democrats are going to cut food stamps to give money to anybody?
Well, again, where is the money coming from? Bottom line, I don't want to add more numbers to the unemployment rolls. And let me tell you something. Men and women that walk into fires, first responders, cops, etc., that walk to disasters to save us when we're walking away, teachers that have the minds of our future in their hands, my kids included, let them keep their jobs, and I'm very happy to pay for that.
Professor Boudreau, they will not keep their jobs if this is a one-shot injection that lasts for one school year, or in the case of the cops and the firemen, for one full year. What happens at the end of that year? Do the states go back to the federal government for more printing of money
anybody's really concerned about keeping jobs long term, cut taxes, get rid of a lot of the stupid regulations. That's the only way you're going to get sustained economic growth, and the only way teachers and these other people can have secure jobs.
You were on the floor of the House of Representatives 2 days ago, and we're given a few minutes to say why this thing won't work or what you think of it. What would you have said,
I would have
Emac?
said, you know, get rid of the pork earmarks then. That would have paid for these benefits if you want to do it right. And you know what? The fiscal antenna has fallen off the roof of the Capitol Dome a long time ago. The fiscal dipsomaniacs, the lunatics in Congress have really taken over, and it's really got to stop. And voters will enact their own version of term limits at the ballot box.
Before we go, dipsomaniacs?
That means fiscal alcoholics.
All right, nicely put. Marshall, Emac, Boudreaux, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Is the